Howdy, Possum Patty here, and as you can see, I'm outside, and it is cold and windy, and there's a lot of snow on the ground, but Flat Stanley has asked me to come outside because he wanted to show us something very special. So let's go see what he's up to. There he is over on that rock. All right, let's take a walk over. Looks like there's some goings on over here, Stanley. Flat Stanley is saying that Possum Patty's not the only one with a fine rock collection, and that he has been collecting some special Connecticut rocks also, and that he was lucky enough to find this old Indian weather stone. He's explaining that if you look at the stone and it's white, it has snowed outside. Very good, Stanley. He says that if the stone is swinging back and forth, you know that it is windy. If you can see the stone very clearly, it's sunny outside. And if you cannot see the stone very clearly, it's foggy. And he says, finally, if the stone is wet, it's raining. Very good, Stanley. He says one more thing. He said if the stone is hopping up and down, it's an earthquake. Oh my. Well, I can see that the stone is starting to swing back and forth, and it is cold outside. So I will take a picture. So there it goes. I will take a picture, Stanley, so everybody can see, and then let's go inside and warm up. Stanley was very excited about finding his own old Indian weather rock. I said, Stanley, why don't we take a picture of it, and then we'll go inside and we'll put it in the journal, and we could do some journaling about your old Indian weather rock. At first he thought that was a very good idea, but when we came inside, he said, the gnomes have a journal, the trolls have a journal, the fairies have a whole little bookcase full of journals. He said, I thought you were making me a journal too. I want to put that old Indian weather rock in my own journal. Well, you know, he's right. I said I was going to make Flat Stanley his own journal because all of a sudden, everyone here at Soggy Bottom wanted their own journals. Well, I think the fairies started that idea by making lots of journals. So, guess what I've been doing this afternoon? I've been making a journal for Flat Stanley, and that's what I've been doing today. But first, you know, Flat Stanley keeps popping up in my videos, and everywhere he goes, people seem to know who he is. But I forget, there's some folks out there who might not know who Flat Stanley is. Now, this Flat Stanley is from 2003. Yes, doesn't look it, but he's 21 years old, right? And he came from a children's book. And this is the book about Flat Stanley, how he got flat, and his adventures. Now, there is a Flat Stanley project that teachers participate. So I was teaching first grade when I got this Flat Stanley. And the idea was that they would take Flat Stanley on an adventure or draw their own little Flat Stanley and use that one. So I started a journal, and I did the first page. And I told the story about how I put Flat Stanley in my pocketbook, and I drove to my son's house, and we had a visit, and I took a picture with Flat Stanley, my son, and myself, and I wrote it all down in the journal. And then I gave Flat Stanley to every student in the class, had their turn with Flat Stanley, and they took them all kinds of different places, and they drew a picture or took pictures, and they wrote a little story. And I still have these stories from 21 years ago. I might share a few of these with you as we do more journaling and Flat Stanley's new journal. So this is what I'm working on. I have a couple more things to do to finish this up, and then we're going to do the page about the old weather rock. So come on along. I wasn't sure what kind of journal would be appropriate for Flat Stanley. My first thought was to take his original book, take off the cover, save the story, put a new spine on there and add some pages, and then use that. But then I got to thinking, this is Stanley's original book, and this is where he came from. And I decided that, no, I didn't really want to take his original book apart. So Flat Stanley and I sat down, had a little brainstorming, and we decided that since he is a storybook character, that perhaps an altered book would be the best journal for him. So we looked around through my stash and we found this old storybook. Now this storybook, I believe I got this in a swap probably a couple years ago. Yeah, because I didn't do any swaps last year. So this is from a few years ago. It is a very old, easy reader. The cover is in pretty bad shape, and the inside of the book was even in worse shape. Very brittle. The pages are just falling apart. Have a beautiful, distressed coloration to it. This belonged to Philip. I thought that was pretty precious. But this was published, I think, in 1962. 1962. Now, the original story of Flat Stanley came out in 1964. So I thought this would be, yes, Stanley, this is appropriate, right? Because your original book was 1964, and this book is 1962. So we're in the little time frame there. So I think I'm just going to leave the cover like that. It's pretty much well worn. The corners are bare. It's dirty. It says 50 cents. Look how the back is stained. But you know what? I like that. I like that. It is a well-read book from the early 60s. And the cover is just going to stay like that. Now, I didn't videotape me making this journal, but I did my usual method on how I make a journal out of a book. And I will list a couple videos below, 10 easy steps. And I'm using little golden books, but it's the same idea. And because these pages were so brittle and old, I couldn't use any of this paper inside the journal. But I can cut some of these out and Mod Podge them in because I think the Mod Podge would preserve them a little bit. So I will hang on to these. And I just used plain paper, nothing fancy, because we're going to decorate every page with Flat Stanley's adventures anyway. But I did one more thing. One more thing. I copied I copied the front and the back of the book. At first, I thought I was going to put it here. And then I was like, no, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to leave this as the cover and put this on the inside. And I have one that is the back cover too. I'm going to put some yellow paper there because look how nicely that makes that stand out. And I have the back cover. I've got to cut a paper for the back cover, and I'm going to put that back there so that he has his original story covers inside. The first thing I'm going to do is glue down this new end paper, and I'm just picking up on the yellow from this material that I used. I know it has nothing to do with airplanes, but you know, Stanley loves his safari animals, his elephants and giraffes, and especially little monkeys there. So he approved of that. And I think this yellow is going to just give it just a touch of brightness at the borders instead of having this distressed paper showing. Just going to brighten it up a little bit. Plus it's got a little bit of sparkle to it. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm trying to use up some of my stash, and I have this glue from the Dollar Tree, this Jot white glue, and I've been using it to glue down some backgrounds. Using it like it was some matte medium or something. I put it in the little cup, and then I get my brush and paint it on. Paint it on and put the paper down, and it seemed to work pretty good. Do you remember Flat Stanley in school, or maybe your kids or your grandkids? Because there's a new Flat Stanley out now. The original author has passed away, but other authors have written some Flat Stanley stories. He looks a little different in the new ones too. So let's do some Flat Stanley trivia. What is Flat Stanley's last name? Without looking it up, do you know what Flat Stanley's last name is? Time's up. Flat Stanley's last name is Lamb Chop. Lamb Chop. Yeah, I thought that was funny, Lamb Chop. Stanley Lamb Chop. I think I'm going to use that on the back of the picture too. I just want to be careful not to get it on the other side because I did print it out with glossy photo paper. Okay, I've got that all glued down. I think just that little bit of yellow at the top of the bottom makes the page so much brighter. Okay, now I'm going to put the back of Stanley's book on the back, but I need to cut some more paper. And then I'm going to glue this down. Are you ready for your second question? Okay. The second question is, how did Flat Stanley get flat? How did Flat Stanley get flat? Do you remember the answer? Well, his father had pinned up a large bulletin board so that Stanley and his brother could put up messages and maps and pictures in this big bulletin board in their bedroom. And during the night, it fell on him, and by morning, he was flat. Okay, we have the end pages on, looking very bright and colorful. And now let's put the weather rock picture in here. And I thought because of the snow outside that we would use a snowman background. So while I am cutting this paper down to size, can you tell me how Stanley traveled to California when he wanted to visit his friend on school vacation? I found this old picture, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe this is the Kutztown Fair in Pennsylvania. I can see the old tractors lined up back there. And here's a tripod with sticks and an old Indian rock. Stanley's so happy he has his own now. And it says, genuine old Indian weather rock. Place outside. When rock is wet, it is raining. When it is white, it is snowing. When it is hard to see, it is foggy. When it is casting a shadow, it is sunny. When it is moving back and forth, it is windy. If the rock feels cold, it's cold out. If the rock feels warm, it's warm out. And if the rock is jumping up and down, there's an earthquake. Old Indian never wrong. Old Indian never wrong. So I thought I would put a picture of Flat Stanley and his weather rock together with this old picture, maybe make a journaling card. Then I need a little tuck, so I'm going through some winter things here. And I found this. I like this. Winter hot chocolate, December sleigh ride, snowman, January baking cookies, catching snowflakes, falling snow, cozy blankets, snowball fights, relaxing fireside, woolen mittens, February snowbound. We didn't get a good snow until February, and that might just be the perfect thing to make a tuck. But this snowman is cute too. Let's build a snowman. But we already got a bunch of snowmen on there. I think I'm going to cut this a little bit. Like that, because I want to see some of these snowmen. I just put some Fabri-Tac glue on two sides. So this will be a tuck. And then I'm going to look for a piece of paper to make a journaling card. In the meanwhile, so did you answer the question, how did Stanley travel to California? In a very large envelope. Okay, I'm going to look for some paper now to make a journaling card for these two pictures. And while I do that, you can think about, what did Stanley's brother use him for? What did Stanley's brother use him for? I used one of those cut aparts from that paper. February 19th, 2024, Flat Stanley finds its very own Old Indian weather rock. Old Indian never wrong. And I'm just going to put this picture on the back like that. Make sure I don't have it upside down. So what did Flat Stanley's brother use him for? A kite. Father took him to the park and they used him for a kite. Okay, last one. Very last question. And that is, what was Flat Stanley's adventure at the art museum? Flat Stanley's adventure at the art museum. As you can see here, Flat Stanley is very pleased with his new journal made from a storybook. And the first page, which is about his Old Indian weather rock. Oh, he's saying he might want to put more rocks in here because I have a rock journal going too. And I do have some pictures of him October, November, December that I was going to smash into my other journals. But he's going to probably want them in his journal along, with maybe some new adventures. Yeah, so there's going to be some journaling in Flat Stanley's journal. Oh, he says, and don't forget to answer the question, what he did at the museum. Did you guess? Well, at the art museum, he pretended that he was a painting so that the police could catch some thieves. He got a little scared, but in the end, the thieves were caught. So I think that's about it for today. Yeah, I have like 4 journals sitting over here, all waiting to get journaled in. So there's going to be some more just journaling. So thanks for coming along today and happy junk journaling. Bye bye.